Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 463, and my guest is Howard Ungerleider. Over 3 decades ago, Howard was assigned to be a tour manager to a relatively unknown Canadian band called Rush. He was also their lighting designer and accountant in those early years, but transitioned out of the tour management responsibility after 24 years. He's designed and directed lighting for Rush and many other powerhouses, including Queensryche, Blue Oyster Cult, Van Halen, Supertramp, Def Leppard, Alicia Keys, obviously businesses, corporations, and the like. He founded Production Design International, which provides lighting all over the world for all sorts of different things, and as just announced, he will be going on tour with Rush for their new tour. So that's very exciting. I really enjoyed talking with Howard. He's a blast. He's hilarious. It's the sweetest guy. And I'm excited for this episode. General stuff, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism on social media. Find my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love, and rock on. Here we go. Howard Ungerleider, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you.
I've got to say, my friend Lizzie Damont, who absolutely loves Rush, is going to be so excited that you're on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning of you. Tell me where you grew up.
Okay. Well, I was born in New York City in a hospital that doesn't exist anymore. I was right in Manhattan.
Once they had you, they shut it down.
They closed it. They turned it into a condo. It goes by the way of the condo. I grew up in New York City and the Bronx for a while until it got to the point where my parents decided to move over to New Jersey. And most of my youth, teenage youth, was spent in Paramus, New Jersey, a little, at the time, celery farm that turned into this industrial shopping mecca of northern New Jersey.
How did you like growing up there?
It was good, I got in a lot of trouble. That was bad.
What kind of bad? The good kind of bad?
Both. The good kind of bad, the bad kind of bad. I went on a mission to do whatever I wanted, because I enjoy freedom. I'm an eclectic person. I don't like being tied down to any one thing. Let's say my schooling wasn't very successful when I started out. And I grew up my father was a drill sergeant. He was a drill sergeant in the United States Army. So it was a strict upbringing in a very sort of, I guess, Italian sort of neighborhood in New Jersey, which I think most of the neighborhoods there are pretty much Italian. I basically grew up in a Sopranos episode. So with my dad, like instilling the really positive loyalty, honesty, this is all these things you have to be. And then on the other side, I grew up with my Italian friends that were the complete opposite of that. So it was a pretty good dynamic.
Good way to shape a well-rounded human.
Definitely. And, you get to experience a lot of things and a lot of fun things. I worked in an Italian restaurant. I watched, truckloads of contraband come and go through the basement of it, while I was making pizza and cooking burgers on a grill. And it was kind of fun.
Did they call you Howie and say, Howie, just look the other way, it's okay? Or did they include you in the nefarious activities?
They said nothing. And they, all my friends called me Howie. No one calls me Howie anymore, except for Geddy Lee's wife calls me Howie to this day. Other than that, no. People, they will call me all different things, names they've heard over the years. As far as I'm concerned, I really enjoy what anyone has to say because I enjoy people, right? I'm a musician, as you are. And when I grew up, I had a band and I always wanted to see how far I can take it, which wasn't very far, as I found out the hard way. And one day I just wandered into an office of this gentleman named Sean LaRoche, and the secretary would never let me get by her desk. And then I just, kept coming back, and I needed to see this man because he worked with The Who, which was one of my favorite bands at the time, and I needed to meet with him and just see if he could help me out. And one day when she was on a lunch break, I decided to scurry into the office and just go bypass her desk and find Mr. LaRoche, who I met only once before at a concert when I was in university for my brief year before I got tossed. I knew that he was a powerful man in the industry and I needed to speak with him. I found his office. There he was behind his desk. I walked in there and basically I learned the hard way about walking into someone's office without being announced. And I asked him a question, and I said to him, Mr. LaRoche, I'm trying to get my band a recording contract, and I know that you're in the industry, and I'm just wanting to come here and see what I can do. And he basically stood up and he said, number one, you don't walk into my office ever without being announced. Number two, you never ask for a recording contract because you're never going to get one. He said, there's 10,000 bands out there wanting a recording contract. I can tell you right now, yours is not one of them. And he said, you better learn about this industry before you even come into my office and make a fool of yourself.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's not very rock and roll of him.
No, not really. And he was very uptight, actually.
Yeah.
And, but he was very nice as well, because he said to me, he said, you better get rid of your equipment and you better learn this industry like the back of your hand before you can walk into anyone's office. So I'll tell you what I'll do for you, just to get you out of here quickly. I'm going to give you a bunch of names of people to go have a chat with. And you could go there and you can work as an office boy. You could deliver coffees, teas, whatever they want you to do. You can work in a mailroom and learn about the business. He goes, so here's a bunch of names. You can tell them that I sent you. And now it's time for you to leave. And basically escorted me out of the office. And that was that. I had my list. And for the next 3 weeks, I just pounded the streets of New York and visiting people. And eventually I stumbled across this gentleman named Jeff Franklin, who owned an agency called American Talent International. And he had just had another company called Action Talent. And, they were talent scouts. So I went in there and I used the Sean LaRoche card and I asked him if he needed any help. And he said I was lucky because he just moved from a very small agency to one right across from Carnegie Hall in New York. It was big. He took up the whole floor of the 21st floor of 888 7th Avenue. And he was planning on signing 60 different bands, but I never knew this. When I arrived, he just said, I have a job for you. He said, you can come back here on Monday, because it was Friday when I met him. You could come here at 9 a.m. Do not be 1 minute late. And I'm going to set you up and you could work in our mailroom. You could take care of all the mail. And I went, oh, really? He goes, yeah, pays $50 a week. He said, you can take it or leave it. But I'll tell you, if you're late, don't bother even coming. So I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that was my start.
What year was this?
1971.
I'm trying to think in terms of $50 a week. Was that a living wage back then?
No.
Okay.
No, it was not. It was very, very low money, right? And, I was thrown into it. And, I learned very quickly about, mail. I learned very quickly about, coffee and tea and all those good things and what the agents, and all the talent scouts that worked for him, who are drumming up business for all these bands that he signed. He took a trip one day and he came back and he had 60 bands on the roster. It's probably one of the biggest agencies in the world at the time. And I had the opportunity to be in the mailroom at this place. And, the agents were nuts. They were lunatics, all of them. They were booking shows, standing on their desk on speakerphones, freaking out at people. And
They're probably coked out of their minds.
absolutely. There were mountains of coke.
Oh, man. Were you at that point deciding to then turn in the music side and go into the business side, or were you still keeping your aspirations?
A musician is always a musician.
I agree.
Not a professional musician, but a musician at that. I always loved music. And, I started in this agency and I had a lot of perks. One was called free goods. You know what a free good is? The way back when the record labels would send the agents free albums of all of their artists to send out to promoters at the time to say, hey, we want you to buy this band. Here's what they sound like. So there was a big library of free goods, which everybody helped themselves to. My big perk was I got to pick albums and come home and give them to my friends, and say, here, you want the next Deep Purple Machine Head album or this or that. And I go back because of being the age that I am and spanning the 70s, 80s, 90s, right up to now, which I'm still current. I'm still here doing things. So I was able to have some perks, see some shows for free, and work at this agency. And over time, work my way up to becoming an agent and learning the business and how to formulate deals and travel with bands and making sure that the promoters didn't rip them off. And if they did, I was sent in to straighten it out. And because, you represent all these acts as an agent, you carry a lot of weight, to go in there and strong arm promoters. Mm-hmm. Well, if you want Rod Stewart next month, you have to take these 3 bands, and you have to pay Blue Oyster Cult the money that you took from them last week. And you have to put it in this paper bag, and I got to take it home with me today.
This is where your Italian background,
this is where it helps.
Your Sopranos childhood helps.
Oh, it was interesting back then, very interesting.
I imagine you have an incredible vinyl collection.
Oh, yeah. It was huge. I say it was because it was huge when I had to make the transition. And there was the transition that it was kind of funny as there were 3 partners at ATI in New York. And, one of them said to me, listen, you have 2 choices. I said, what's that? He said, you can go to Toronto and work for a club band up there, or you could have the second choice, which is you're fired. And I'm saying, well, why? And he's like, because we signed a band from Canada and we want you to teach them how to tour. And I said, well, I don't want to go to Canada. I said, I have family here. And I'm like, I'm loving this job. And he's like, I give you your 2 choices. You pick. Right. So I picked going to Canada. And I didn't know the little club band was Rush, who they had just signed to go on a world tour with a band called Uriah Heep. I'm sure no one knows these bands.
Oh, no, everybody knows those bands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So my job was to go up, teach them about touring, be their tour manager, tour accountant, travel Canada. That was my first.
Which is a humongous place.
It is, and cold.
Yeah. So here you are, you have to go to Canada for some, at the time in your mind, podunk band.
Yes.
How did you take in Rush for the first? I'm trying to put myself in the position of hearing Rush for the first time. There's no band like them. So how did that cover your body?
It was pretty spectacular because being a musician and hearing these guys play together, which, it was a while from the time I arrived to the time I actually heard them play. It was a learning experience because they put me up in Richmond Hill, which is north of Toronto. And I was thinking all the time that this Richmond Hill place was Toronto. And that's like probably, I don't know, it's like Chico, California or something. It's like a small little area,
Hmm.
I got in there and then I realized that, oh, Toronto is not as further south than where I was, and I was like crashing on the manager, their manager's floor, his couch. One point I was sleeping next to a Saint Bernard.
Oh, to be young again.
Oh yeah. No, it's great. I mean, hey, listen, I was on the road with them. We did 200 cities a year for probably the first 3 years we were out there. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
A lot of traveling. And a lot of it was in, different kind of vehicles, cars, station wagons, vans, motorhomes, buses. It was a lot of traveling, but a lot of fun. The first time I actually heard them play, there was an electricity that was coming from this band. That the only other band I think I've ever heard, before that with that much electricity was the band The Who, and they had like incredible electricity when they played live as a three-piece. And don't forget, they had another drummer that I never heard. When I arrived in Toronto, Rush did not have a drummer, and they were auditioning drummers. So the first time I actually heard them play with Neil Peart, it was just outrageous. It was like, wow, these guys are going to be huge.
You either have it or you don't have it. I remember the first time I saw Coldplay, I got brought into a showcase. They had just been signed, and my buddy worked for the label, and he's like, yeah, check out this band. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And I remember sitting there and I turned to my friend Bruce, also a Canadian, by the way. I turned to my friend Bruce and I said, oh my God, these guys are going to be absolutely humongous. There's just a difference. There's something.
Yeah, you can tell.
You really can. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think that CEO also can tell.
Yeah, for sure. Did the guys have a sense themselves that they were going to go down in history, as it were? Or no?
I don't think so. I think they knew they were onto something really great because New York agencies signing a Canadian band was pretty unheard of back then. It was very difficult. And the thing that really helped break Rush in the history, and everyone who's a Rush fan would know this, that the station WMMS in Cleveland, and this DJ, Donna Halper, who was there playing the album. Everyone thought it was the new Zepp album when it first came on. And it lit up, it just lit up the lines. And shortly after that, she was in contact with Mercury Records in Chicago, where at the time, Cliff Bernstein, who's one of the owners of Q Prime in New York, if you're familiar with them, well, they manage Metallica and
Okay.
huge management company. He was the A&R guy that signed Rush to their first recording contract in the United States. So they really, they hit all the marks, which Canadian bands have a really hard time getting into the US. And they were at the right place, the right time, with the right people.
Man, I bet a lot of radio people miss the days when they could break a band. That just doesn't happen anymore. It's so computer driven and the same 12 songs over and over again. I know now people rely on things like TikTok and the social media, and they won't even get signed which drives me insane. It has really little to do with talent and everything to do with the numbers of your social media. But at the time, back then, how do you help the band understand what their responsibilities are and what it means and keep them going? Because that many dates is exhausting. They're away from friends and family. They maybe when they get into it, they're like, yes, this is exactly who I want to be, but don't really understand how much work it actually is. And this is back in the day when you would throw your CDs in the back of your car and go just play your ass off anywhere and everywhere, mosquitoes or for big opening things. So how did you formulate that plan for them and help them along the way?
Well, the plan was formulated by the agents in New York who booked the shows. All I had to do was make sure that they were arriving there and departing there and making it to the next place. They are very intelligent. The three guys in Rush not only were funny, but they were also very, very They were very nice, and they were very work oriented. They were together from the late 60s. Before I met them, they were playing in and out of bands and having Rush break up and reform and all sorts of different things way before I even was there. So I sort of walked into, Rush Mark II, and it was time to do some Canadian shows. And here, me being from New York, and I know they used to like refer to me as, oh, here's the fucking Yank from New York, who thinks he knows everything. And he goes, now welcome to Canada. And, you're in Canada now. And they, we got there, and, Getty used to tell me, if you want a good slice of pizza, you go to this place. It's called Pizza, right? And I'm like, I've been there. That's awful pizza. He goes, oh, you Yanks, you think you know everything. I said, when you get to New York, I will give you a pizza. And I mean, we had a good time. But then on the way up to Cochrane, Ontario, which was minus 35 degrees, I never experienced anything that cold. And, they said, Neil says to me from the back, he goes, hey, do you have any warm clothes? And I have denim jacket and jeans and, my running shoes. And, Gideon and Alex, they're like, pull over. Those are your warm clothes? I said, yeah, this is what I got. He goes, you don't have any jacket or anything? He goes, if we had an accident right now, you'd die. I said, there's no way I would die. They go, you Yanks, you have no idea. Okay, pull the car over, get out, and I want you to take a nice deep breath of fresh air. Really deep. Make sure you deep breath, okay? I said, yeah, all right. So I pulled the car over. As soon as I closed the door of the car, I hear the automatic door locks, right? And then I take this big, deep breath of air, and it felt like someone took two knives and sliced my nose open, and then I go, okay, this is cold. And then I turn around to get back in the car, and my hand freezes to the doorknob. Like, in the early days when you're a kid and your tongue stuck to the piece of metal that someone dared you to lick, right?
Brother, yeah, I did it, sure.
And then they wouldn't open the car door. And I'm like, then I finally got in the car, and they say, so Yank, what do you think? Is it cold enough for you out there? I go, yeah. They go, okay, next truck stop, you're buying something to wear because you're not going to survive through this. And then from there, we just drove, we went Thunder Bay, Ontario, Winnipeg, places I've never seen, got to experience some amazing things like the Northern Lights, which just were incredible, and then they did a small cross Canada tour, and we drove and drove and drove.
And drove some more.
We shared the driving responsibility. I did a lot of the driving, but they shared responsibilities, and along with, doing various drugs and things to, keep your attention at bay,
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of it all until the one show in August of, I would think it was August of 74, when we went with Uriah Heep on their world tour across the United States. And we went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which was their first show in front of 15,000 people.
How did the audience take them in?
Amazing. It was like everybody was in shock. We were all in shock. It was so amazing. It was probably one of the best experiences they ever had. The roar of a crowd. You can't really imagine that when you're playing clubs for most of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Until you get out there and you're like, oh, hey, this is really happening to us.
It's a hell of a communion to have that between the audience and the musicians, and from either side.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Really, you raised each other up in a lot of ways then.
Yes.
Like siblings.
That's exactly how it was. Like, I was maybe a year older than them at the time. I was young. I think I was like just turned 22 when I started working for them. And I started at the agency when I was around, I guess, 20. I got booted out of university at 19. So it was a good start. It's like,
As you're watching them develop, where along the way do you start thinking, okay, there needs to be some drama around what's going on? And first of all, by the way, as a lyricist, my primary thing, I write lyric and melody.
right.
Those things are incredibly important to me. And I remember our mutual friend, Paul, he and I dated a million years ago. And one of the first things he did was introduce me to Rush. I was out of high school and listening to The Cure and, all that kind of stuff, Yaz and this sort of Euro influence pop music. And he's like, oh, you got to listen to this. And I was like, what is happening? Who is this? The lyrics were so incredible, just the storytelling. And
Yeah,
I was hooked. I was hooked immediately.
it's unusual for a female to be hooked on Rush. And as we saw in our demographics for the first 20 years that we were out there, it was mainly a male-oriented audience.
Sure. Lizzie would be very upset to hear that, by the way. She would be like, wait a minute.
She would know it. I mean, it was common. You go to a Rush, a Rush concert, it would be 95% males.
Yeah. Well, Lizzie's one of the greatest musicians I've ever worked with. So I think that there's also something musicianship recognizes musicianship as well. And that's the thing. Like for me, it started out about the lyrics, but then once that spell was sort of, in its place, the new spell of realizing I guess I use the word mathematics, but just the intricacies of the music. For me, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable to myself. I mean, you take the best jazz fusion, you combine it with the heaviest of rock, and there were bands at the time that were doing things like that. I mean, Emerson, Lake and Palmer were there doing it. King Crimson was doing it. Yes, we're doing it. Genesis were doing it. There was a lot. And Rush took it to the next level. But Neil Peart, the lyricist, was a genius. He was just brilliant. I mean, he was a voracious reader.
You can tell.
And he would, he would read endlessly. I mean, when we were on those drives, all he would do was read book after book after book. And then when he would pen these lyrics, and it was amazing, like, how the other two guys would writing the music would intertwine this together. And it just came out to be just really incredible. I'm very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time as well. We got along famously. We still get along to this day. It's just a really nice brotherhood of a life's work, basically.
Yeah. At what point did the theatrics start, where you start developing the visual aspect?
It started right away because as soon as we started playing live, in a professional, because I had grown up doing lighting in high school for various plays and things, it was sort of a hobby for me. So I took it on. I was not only the tour manager and tour accountant, I was also the lighting director, and I would get what I was told by the headliners. Sometimes they were nice, sometimes they were awful. Sometimes they would give Rush sound check. Sometimes they would say no sound check. You don't get to put your gear on until the audience is in, and you can't eat until we're done. In catering, it was like some really bad things, and there were some really nice people, like the guys in Kiss were like really friendly, and then the Uriah Heep guys were amazing. There was like, you would get to travel with famous bands that were out there selling, millions of tickets, and some friendly and some little uptight. I mean, Rush was a force to be reckoned with. There were a lot of the headliners really didn't want to give them the whole PA system to crank up because they were afraid. Like, here's the three guys from Canada. They're just tearing it up. They're ripping it. And, better tone them down a little bit. Over the course of the years, I got very into the theatrical lighting, and over the course of the 40 years that I was with them, I sort of developed my own style, and I incorporated all my effects. A lot of my ideas came from nature and from lighting, from watching the sun through clouds, watching the moon through clouds, watching the moon through trees, lying out of my mind one night, stoned, looking at wind chimes, thinking they would make great video walls, and things like this. And I would be putting these different shows together, and everyone was different. And I would do what was called, I call it lighting choreography, where I would take the lyrics and the lights and sort of merge them together. So when they're singing about something, the lights would be, replicating what they're singing about. And a lot of times I thought I'm the only one that knows that, right? Like, oh yeah, I did this, but no one's going to know that. And then sometimes you'll get fans that will come up to you and go, I like what you did here when they said, this and that and this and that, and you did all those things. And I'm like, wow, someone does see that. So now it's not for nothing. It's for me and for them.
Huge fan base. I don't doubt that at all. I feel like the work that you've done over the decades, which is mind-boggling anyway, that you have inspired up and coming lighting designers. Certainly.
It's true, because I do get a lot of mail, especially on Instagram. Like, I don't have a lot of followers, but I have enough. And I have, people on Facebook that are constantly saying, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this business. And thank you so much. And it warms my heart, makes me feel great. I know that, I've always given young people and old people the time of day. When they want to know things, they ask questions. I'll answer them. I'll take the time if I have it, But when I'm working, I don't see anybody. It's like, I can have close friends that would stand in front of me while the show is going, and I don't see them. I'm in a little zone that is my own little zone. And then they would get upset, and at the end of the night, they would come back and they go, oh, you're too good for us now? And I went, what do you mean? And I said, well, we're standing in front of you waving. I said, do you think I can see anything when I'm doing a show? I said, I'm zoned in on the stage and in my mind, and I'm talking to a dozen spotlight operators calling cues. I said, I'm out there. I said, I'm sorry, but, hi. I'll say hi now. Here you are.
I mean, I think that, for lack of a better word, it's choreography, and you have to be so on what's going on so that you can make sure the choreography is doing what it's supposed to.
Exactly. And a lot of the things that I do are automatic. Like I'll do on the fly. I have a computer running down the majority of the cues, but I'll augment those cues manually just to get in there for timing and do certain things, especially with Rush's timing. I don't want a computer doing, timing, because it would look sterile.
You bring up a great thing that I wanted to talk about, actually, in that AI is little by little taking over everything creative.
I am embracing AI in all different ways. There's AI that's being used in some of the immersive technologies that are coming in, that I've been working with on other shows, and talking with other bands. And there is a technique from a company that's out there called Luz, L-U-Z, or L-U-Z, as they say up here. And this company does immersive stage sets where they make it look like there's something on stage that's really not there. And it's incredible. And then when they throw lighting through it, they use artificial intelligence to shade the video that's being projected. So when the lights move, the shadows are created by AI.
So like holographic?
Yeah. So it's basically, they take little pixels and they break it up and they send it out. So if you're standing there watching a show and there's a let's say a warehouse scene where you're standing inside of a warehouse, and the depth perception of that warehouse is incredible. And you are convinced that it's a built stage set that's existing there. Well, you're convinced there until the next song comes up and they're standing in a field of flowers and it's like not there anymore.
All the world's stage.
This is something insane. This is something really amazing, and it warrants looking into.
How do you feel about what you said a few minutes ago about the sterility of computers in comparison?
I would never just use a computer to do the whole show. I would always use a human element interjecting. I don't like when it's sterile. It used to be the time when you used to have spotlight operators, physical people up in the truss. Now you have these infrared cameras and you have lighting that you're programming into the as spotlights, and you have guys under the stage manipulating and following the artists around. And they can trigger the cues, or you can program into your lighting console. But I love that human feel of people actually triggering cues on a call, rather than just touching a button and going boop, 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 boop. There it is. It's going to be there. I like the human error factor too. It just brings a different feel to the show.
I like the human element. I mean, I think of bands like Pearl Jam and Counting Crows where there's no auto tune. It's just the voice doing what the voice does.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather hear that organic, the beauty of what the voice will do in any given moment than having it tuned up to perfection as so many artists.
It's funny, Rush as a three-piece, they used computers to trigger pedals on stage that had, sounds that would come out because only a three-piece. So, Geddy would play keyboards with his feet sometimes. And then they have all these sounds that were like in there, but they were triggering them live, even though they were there. It's not like a computer coming in, and they were not ever playing to track.
Sure. Well, Imogen Heap did that a lot. She had the music that she would start singing something on stage, record it, and then that would become the loop, and then she would sing something else and record. I think she still probably does it that way. It's very cool to watch. I do like that hybrid of machine and man or woman. I can't help but worry that the beauty of boredom and creativity intersecting to create incredible things. And if the computers are constantly doing the thing, then where does the creativity, if we're not bored because we're constantly being placated by a computer, what are we missing out on?
I know what you're saying, and I'm hoping it doesn't go that way, because I always love the human element. That's why I'm here in the human show here, because of the human element. There's something to be said about it. There's something said about somebody making a mistake. Nobody is infallible, and it brings you into that live experience.
Well, humanity is a big deal.
It is.
Yeah. And we're desperate for it as well. And I think there's a truth to humanity that's why it resonates. This is why music resonates so deeply with humans, is that it stirs up the truth with a capital T, and you can't replicate that. It's just not the same.
No.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's just enjoyable when you get out there and you're performing and the band is just on 10, gelling. The audience is participating in it. It's no better feeling than that.
Eye out of their minds.
And then I'm standing in the back room pushing buttons, talking to spot operators.
I'm fascinated by the idea that you can create an entire stage setting that looks three-dimensional and real, and that the person standing right in front of it wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That fascinates me.
Well, it's funny because, the guys in Rush never ever really saw their show until they started doing videos and having to edit. So they never knew what was going on. And then one day, I think Geddy was in the editing room doing something, and he basically said, "Listen, don't tell the other guys I'm saying this, but it was amazing what you're doing. I had no idea." I mean, it was really funny. He went to see Talking Heads once, and then he came back after the show and he goes, "Oh, they had this amazing effect." I said, "What was it?" He goes, "They had this light that was like over their head on a light post, and it looked like a shower. It looked like it was raining on them at times." And I'm like, "Really?" He says, yeah, we should look into that. I said, Ged, we have 100 of those on us. He went, what? I went, yeah,
That's
they had no idea because they play every night. They don't look at what's going on.
sure. How about some stories from the road that you haven't maybe told before?
Oh, I've told them all, I think. Stories from the road. There's too many and they're very long. I mean, I could tell you one that was hair-raising, but it would be a completely whole other episode.
Oh, well, how about the highlights or the lowlights?
The highlights, I met an A&R guy that worked for a record label one year who was very good friends with this gentleman who was a drug dealer. And he would bring them to the shows, but, and they would bring different samples of different things that people would like to try. And then in return, you'd give them some passes. And then they would come see the show and say, see you next time. And then he would show up in other cities, the same routine. And over the course of time, the record company rep finally told me that he works for, a dubious family down in Florida. He has to report back to them all the time. And this guy would carry an way old school cell phone, like in an attaché case with a whip antenna on it. And, it made me a little paranoid over the course of about 6 or 7 times when he visited our tour. And then one day he wound up killing 2 people in Dayton, Ohio. And, I get a phone call from the A&R guy. I'm not coming to your show in Kentucky, but if this person shows up, you're going to have to turn him into the police because he just murdered 2 people and they found the bodies in his house. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It was like one of those, right? And I'm like, no. And he goes, it made me so paranoid, right? I told my friend who was the promoter in Louisville, I told him this brief story that I just spoke with you about. And I said, listen, if anything weird happens, let me know. And about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he goes, I don't want to panic you, but there's about 20 black Chryslers just surrounded the arena. And I went, thank you. And then I had to go to the whole crew and say, get rid of everything you have. They hated me for that. There's a lot of toilet flushing happening. A lot of plastic bags emptied. Sure enough, yeah, it was the Drug Enforcement Agency and the FBI. They were all there. They came in the building, and I made the mistake of going up to them, because I had to say something. After the show was over, they were all gone. The guy never showed up, and I was happy for that. It was just very scary, and I had to do the whole show that night with a big lump in my throat because they threatened that I was going to jail after the show was over. They had tape recordings of my conversations with the A&R guy. Oh yeah, they had everything going, and it turned out that this friend who was the drug dealer was actually a DEA agent that was hired to infiltrate the mob in Florida, and he turned. Once he saw how much money was being made, he went from a DEA agent and that's who I was dealing with.
Holy shit.
So this is just an idea of one of the stories.
Oh, wow. That's incredible and cinematic.
It is.
Oh my God. How the hell did everyone function back in the day? Because I know that everybody was high as kittens. How in the world?
You had some kind of control. You knew when to do it and when not to do it. You could do it on days off. You don't do it when you're working.
Yeah.
It's one of the things. And if you did do it when we were working, you do it behind closed doors where no one knew.
Yeah.
Right? But, there was one of the things where you just, over time, it went away. Because you can't do it forever and live.
Right. Of course.
You have all these people that will surround you all the time and, they'll give you as much as you want until you're dead. And then once you're gone, they're going to go, well, let's go to the next person. Let's go to the next band. Once you're gone, they'll just move on and they'll go to the next person and do it to them. So you have to realize that it's something that you really have to control. And, there is a bit of control involved. And the guys in Rush, I wouldn't call them, drug guys at all. Matter of fact, at one point in time, Getty called, smoking hash and marijuana the foul fumes of failure, the three Fs. Oh yeah, it's funny. Like, we had our moments out there. We did some crazy stuff.
A lot of memories you can barely even remember.
Well, eventually I'll have to write a book. I keep saying it. My wife hates me because I've been saying it for like 20 years now. And, I don't do it because I'm not a writer. And she's like, just talk into a tape recorder. I'm like, I just can't do that. I need to be prompted. I have so many stories. I could look at a map and be prompted of stories,
I'll write it with you. We'll write it together.
Perfect.
I'll interview you and we'll do it like an interview book. That'd be fun.
Do you know how many interviews it would take?
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, but it'd be fun. It'd be so much fun.
It would be fun. This is fun, just being here. I didn't even talk technicals, and it's good.
As you developed your style and lighting, you turned that into a mega company.
Well, it's not, I wouldn't say mega company. It was a nice family sort of business. Like, it's a mom and pop. I did, bring a few lighting fixtures to fruition over the years and some consoles that I put together that for the time were mind-boggling because no one could do some of those effects with the consoles that existed. And I had a good team of people in New York that I used who worked a lot with the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West, and they would help me bring my dreams to fruition. And they're still on the wall at a company in New York called C Factor. And, a lot of my old consoles are hanging on the wall of fame up there, or the wall of shame. Depends how you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I had a lot of people at times come up to me and go, "How did you do that?" And I'd say, "Oh, it was magic. I did it with pins." And I did. I used to have little pin matrices set up. It was very similar to something off of Star Trek. And I had friends of mine that actually were like Trekkies that would come up with some ideas based around the ideas that I had to give them. And some of their ideas I adopted too. We just put them together in lighting consoles. Every now and then I run across somebody who said, "Oh, I have one of those old consoles that you did with a joystick on it that we could do." I'm like, "Yeah." I had a joystick that had north, south, east, and west. And then we'd have a series of them. And with using pins, you could create groups of lighting to go to the north, south, east, and west. And when you would rotate the joystick, it would chase the lights in a pattern, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
How'd you meet your wife?
At a party where most people meet their wives at parties. I met her at two different parties at two different times. And she was amazing. And it was a party on a golf course. And I sort of just loved her smile. And she had recently been divorced. And I just sort of got along with her and chatted her up. And we got married. And we're still married. Whoops.
Part of the secret is that if you travel a lot, then the person is always sort of in a state of missing you. That's probably good.
It is. But she was a school teacher for many years. So she was teaching, so she couldn't really travel, but I would fly her out when I could. Mm-hmm. And then when the summer break came, she came on like Monsters of Rock and all these, I was with a band from Seattle called Queensryche for a while. I designed some of their shows, and they were out there with Rammstein and Ozzy Osbourne and all these people. And I would bring in a school teacher from Toronto out to the Monsters of Rock tour and totally a fish out of water. It was really fun.
Having grown up in Seattle, Queensryche, legendary, of course.
Yeah, I had the good fortune to work with them on the Operation Mindcrime Empire tours. That's where we actually used multimedia to the extreme and intermingled it with animation and brought it to life in real time on screens.
Which I feel like was the forerunner to bands like Nine Inch Nails and all the things that they did. And those types of bands, if it weren't for you and the things that you were developing, those things either might not have ever happened, or it would have been a lot longer further off the timeline of life.
This is true.
When you've been with the band for several decades. You are family. You are brothers. You have raised each other up in every conceivable way. And then death visits. And how do you readjust? How does that everything around it? I mean, devastating. How does one soldier on and readjust?
It's very difficult to soldier on. It's extremely difficult to soldier on, especially when you've been through that. But everyone must soldier on, as we know. So when you lose a family member, you must soldier on. It just takes time. And it's one of those things where no one can force a person to soldier on. It has to be in here, inside of you. And you have to want to soldier on to do it. So when the time comes and people want to, they'll soldier on. But, people have to respect that. There's a lot of people who don't respect that. I mean, crazy. Luckily I have my company, Production Design International, and that's a company. We're basically a laser company because I love lasers. I love doing work with lasers. And we've been doing, we just did the Janet Jackson residency in Las Vegas, and we did her tour prior to that. We've been doing Tool since 2006. We're just leaving tomorrow to go out to Australia, Hawaii, Japan, New Zealand, and to do lasers for them on that tour. So that's great. So, we do a lot of corporate shows, a lot of, new music shows out here, EDM shows. We did Kygo recently. It's all great. And, we're open to everything. I love music. I love Tame Impala. That's one of my favorites. It's a song called Let It Happen. Just listen to it. It's kind of cool.
Are you a good sleeper? How do you get the energy to do all these things?
Oh, I am a good sleeper. I mean, I can sleep, but it's just, I'm very energetic. I do have a lot of electricity inside, for my age.
I have kind of a funny question about cover bands. I'm curious, did the guys ever sneak and see any really great Rush cover bands that impressed them?
There are hundreds of
I know.
good Rush cover bands out there.
Oh, good ones. Okay.
The guys in the band, I don't think, have any interest in seeing a Rush cover. But just like an actor doesn't like to watch their own movies sometimes, I have seen the Rush cover bands. They make me smile. I have to say that. And they're, kudos for what they do. There's a ton of them out there. Some better than others. What I really smile about is the young kids that are 3 to 6 years old that are playing Neil Peart drum solos. That's what really makes me smile. And it's just, it's a legacy that, it's a generation of people that are picking up on this. I mean, the last tour with Rush in 2014, 15, even before that, from 2012 to 2015, people were coming out of the woodwork that would never, ever come to a Rush show, including a large female presence, which was great, which we had never seen like that. It was, I would say, it was up to maybe 60-40. It was pretty amazing. And then there were people like Jack Black would turn up, and then all these famous people would turn up, which, it happened once in a blue moon in the early days. But then towards that last 5 years, it was it's coming to a pinnacle. It was crazy.
Were the band really super hard on, are they perfectionists? I mean, to create stuff like that, did it come naturally and easily, or did they suffer for their art?
They suffered for, I have to say, they suffered for their art because they were always challenging themselves. Rush always challenged themselves. If they could do something easily, they didn't want to do it. So they have to do something that's difficult. So let's create something that's even more intense, in a more strange time signature. And they would do it and would be like, wow, who does that? I mean, there's a lot of people that just didn't get them because of the broken time signatures sometimes. There's a lot of songs you can't just hum along to because they're broken, They flow, but the time signatures are constantly changing, and they're abstract time signatures, and you got to love it. Either you love it or you don't. I just love it because I have to groove into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that they truly are, it's not hyperbole to say they truly are a band that stands alone. There are bands that, I don't know, when I think of Rush, I just think they are here. Here they are. Everybody else is everywhere else, but here's Rush.
Yeah. They are. They're a different plane from other bands, but the other bands don't. Some of them realize it. I mean, a lot of them realize it, but some of them don't.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And if you've never heard Rush, anyone listening, definitely check them out. I know this makes me sound very sort of, I don't know, maybe it's girly, but I love the Signals album the best. I do.
Yeah, it's a great album.
I love that record. I really appreciate your time and
thank you so much.
Energy. And this has been a really interesting conversation.
That's great. I'm glad. That's what it's supposed to be, I hope. And if you really want to see some of my work live, I mean, I would suggest you go to YouTube and look at Rush playing a song called The Garden live.
If people want to track you down and find you out there on the World Wide Webs, you have an Instagram. What's it under?
Snow North.
Snow North.
Yes, that's me. Snow North. I also have one for under PDI Effects, Production Design International Effects, PDI Effects.
Your company, yes.
So I have a company one and I have mine. Very modest.
And your website?
My website is PDI Effects, PDI at PDIeffects.com. And if you want to check something cool, I could see my wife's, she makes jewelry.
Oh, cool.
She has a nice jewelry website. It's UrsulaUngerleider.designs.com. URSULA. My last name, Ungerleider, UNGERLEIDER, designs.com. And that's all about jewelry, not about me. She's so cool. And she makes some really nice things. Silversmith, goldsmith. She's a gem cutter. She has her, she works in a shop on Queen Street in Toronto. Rare gems. She works with, rubies, diamonds.
Rubies are my favorite.
She's a stone cutter. She's, cabochon maker. She even taught me how to make some cabochons once. It killed my fingers, but it's okay. I tried it.
Come to Toronto and meet you guys.
You should. Come up.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everybody. And Howard, you are welcome anytime.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Susan.
Yeah, it was really great.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving me the space and the time to do this.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye. See ya.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.